all the exam entries for the Indian Navy. So it is conducted by UPSC twice a year in the months of April and September. For this examination, applications from both male and female candidates are invited. Female candidates are recently being permitted to sit in this examination. Okay. So moving on to the criteria of eligibility to go or to aspire for Indian Navy, to become an officer in Indian Navy through NDA, you have to be in mid of 15.5 years to 18.5 years to appear for the examination. 16.5 years to 19.5 years is just an age to appear for the training, to report yourself for the training at the academy. Okay, now looking on to the education qualification, 12th passed or appearing candidates from any board, that is CBSE, ISC, UP, are eligible to sit in this examination. Now, what subjects choices should be there if you are aiming for the Indian Navy? Then, for Indian Navy, again, physics, chemistry and mathematics, means PCM stream is mandatory for you guys to have in your class 12th or at 10+2 level. If you don't have 10 PCM stream, and if you are from bio, humanities, commerce, then you are not eligible to sit in this examination. Okay, students, moving on to the second and the very important selection procedure, which most of you people search and wanna know about it. So this is, again, I'll give you a little bit information all about the selection procedure of National Defence Academy, basically divided into 4 stages. The written examination will be the first stage, second is your interview, and the third is your medical, fourth All India merit list. But basically these two are the most important tiers involving selection procedure of National Defence Academy in Indian Navy. Alright, moving on to the written examination. Your written examination are divided into 2 question papers. The very first is your paper 1, consists of mathematics, and paper 2 is your general ability test, popularly known as GAT. Alright, so moving on to the mathematics paper, the duration will be of 2.5 hours, 120 questions will be there total, means 120 questions are supposed to be done in 2.5 hours with 300 marks containing 2.5 marks per question, and 1/3 goes for the negative marking, that is 0.83. Now moving on to the general ability, that is your paper 2 held in the second meeting of your day of the examination. Duration same as mathematics students. 2.5 hours will be allotted, 150 questions, again 2 segments, 50 questions for English and rest 100 questions will be for GK. Alright, 600 marks, having 200 for English and 400 for GK, means 600 total marks. Marks per question in this paper will be of 4, and going again for the negative marking as per 1/3 is 1.33 marks will be deducted for attempting a wrong answer. Alright, if you remember, I already told you Services Selection Board interview, known as SSB interview in short, is nothing but just a test of your personality. Test of your personality involving 3 main domains: your thought, mansa, your speech, vacha, and your action, karma. Alright, these 3 domains will be testing for 5 continuous days at the respective SSB boards, wherever you will be called, and then you have to go through all these tests, which starts with screening test on day 1, followed by psychology test on day 2, group testings on day 3 and 4, and then conference. Conference students will be your final result day, means on this day you will get to know whether you are finally selected, you cleared your SSB interview or not. The selected candidates, or they in the SSB it is known as recommended candidates, will go for all the medical formalities put by the NDA or by the board of the examination which conducts it, and then you have to wait for the All India merit list. Seeing your name on the All India merit list, your journey starts at National Defence Academy for 3 years, Khadakwasla, Pune, and 1 year completing the training of 3 years will be Indian Naval Academy, AG, Mala. Alright. So This was all about National Defence Academy. I tried to explain each and everything which you guys should know about National Defence Academy. Moving on to the second section of the entry, that is graduate entries. Look, I am explaining graduate entries and further I'll be explaining you the direct SSB entries just for the sake of your knowledge, all right? You should know about it. What are the entries if you're not eligible for NDA, then you should not lose any kind of hope, you are still eligible to sit in the examinations. Moving on to the graduate entries, the very first and the most important is Combined Defence Services, popularly known as CDS, which is same as NDA, conducted by Union Public Selection Commission, UPSC, twice a year. Now, applications are invited only from the male aspirants. Female are not eligible to sit in examination of CDS if they are aiming for Indian Naval Academy or Indian Navy. This exam is also students conducted twice a year in the months of April and September. Okay. So, moving on to the criteria of eligibility, looking on to the age first, for the Indian Naval Academy students, unmarried male candidates born not earlier than 2nd July 1999 and later than 1st July 2004. This date of birth I have mentioned of the recent notification that is available, so means you have to in mid of 20 years to 24 years, then you are eligible to sit in this examination. Moving on to the educational qualification, I already mentioned you earlier also, PCM in your grade 12 or at 10+2 level is mandatory, and then degree in engineering from a recognized university. It could be your bachelor's in engineering or your bachelor's in technology. Alright, okay. Now, moving on to the selection procedure. I have already mentioned you, look, like the base in any of the examinations for the officer entries in Indian Navy involves majorly 2 tiers of the examination. The first is your written exam and the second is your SSB interview, followed by the medical formalities. After clearing your interview, only the shortlisted candidates will be asked to go for the medical formalities, and then you have to wait for the All India merit list. Alright, moving on to the tier 1, the most important, the entrance examination for Combined Defence Services, Indian Navy, involves 3 papers. Alright, the very first paper conducted in the first meeting of your day is of English. The second is your GK, general knowledge, and the third is your paper third conducted in the third meeting of your day is mathematics. Alright, so all these 3 papers have one thing in common, that the duration allotted to complete the question paper is just 2 hours. Number of questions for English and general knowledge will be 120, but for maths 20 less, means only 100 questions you have to attempt in 2 hours. Marks same for all these 3 question papers, 100 marks will be there. Marks per question for English will be 0.83, general knowledge 0.83 again, but for maths number per marks question allotted to the is 1 marks. Alright, negative marking will go as per the 1/3 deductions. Again, SSB interview. The shortlisted candidates, means all those candidates who will clear the cutoff for the CDS examination, have to appear for the SSB interview, a 5-day continuous personality testings, which goes for the testings of your thought, speech and action. Students, if you cleared your conference, means if you got recommended in your SSB board, you have to go for the medical formalities as per the guidelines, as per the regulations, and then you have to wait for the All India merit list, and then your journey starts for training at Indian Naval Academy, AG Mala. So this were the undergraduate and graduate entries. What I have told you earlier is all about National Defence Academy, Combined Defence Services and Air Force Common Admission Test. Moving on to the very third entry, that is your direct SSB entries. I'll again taking you to the 2 most important entries into the Indian Navy. The very first is your SSC technical branch. For this, it is a short service commission into the technical branch of Indian Navy. Applications are invited from both male and female candidates. Now let's see what is it all about. This is the direct entry in which the candidate will be shortlisted on the basis of the BTech or Bachelor's in Engineering percentages in the respective trades. percentage or the criteria, the cutoff decided every year. It is different. It's not fixed that this percentage, if you attain 80%, if you attain 60%, if you attain 70%, then you are eligible. You can fill the form if you're having some particular kind of percentage in your BTech and BE, but the cutoff is different every year. Okay, looking on to the eligibility criteria. Not more than 20 years, not less than 20 years, and not more than 27 years male and female candidates are eligible to appear in this SSC technical entry. Okay, education qualification, you already must got an idea from this. A candidate with Bachelor of Engineering, BE and BTech, or appearing in final years of both of these degrees can apply for this examination. All right, so candidates who meet the eligibility criteria, means the set cutoff of the percentage in BE and BTech, have asked to report for their SSB interview. SSB interview, I already told you the complete procedure of 5 days. Then the shortlisted candidate goes for the medical things, and then the All India merit list. Okay, so the education entry. If you aspire to teach the candidates going for the BTech training at Indian Naval Academy, AG Mala, or any of the Indian Naval Academy's training programs, then this entry is free. All right, you get to teach technical subjects, you get to teach the core subjects, you get to teach the wing related subjects, means the naval subjects, anything in this through this entries. Navy education entry invites application from both male and female aspirants or candidates who are not less than 21 years and not more than 25 years of age. All right. Looking to the education qualification, students, master's degree with 60% max in physics with mathematics in BSc. Means if you're having the degree of BSc, then it should be having physics and maths, or then maths with physics, and then chemistry and physics if you're pursuing. Basically PCM, BSc in PCM is mandatory for this. Now, computer application or computer science, physics or mathematics at graduation level, you can have both of these subjects apart from PCM if you having any of the degree like that. Meteorology, oceanography, atmospheric science, these are the degrees invited, just because if you're teaching the wing related subject, if you're teaching the BTech cadets going through NDA entries, going through CDS entries and to the Indian Naval Academy. All right. Okay, but BTech 60% max, I already mentioned over here. So this was all about the entry scopes, the examination which you can go through in the Indian Navy through all these examinations. All I have taught you about National Defence Academy, Combined Defence Services. I have told you about the Navy education entry, SSC Tech. So this was all you guys should know about. All right, so the career which is very honorable, adventurous, exciting is waiting for you. Indian Navy have been different since ages. Jai Hind, thank you.
Greetings everyone, welcome to season 2 of Martiniere Career Cell. We will be interviewing an eminent personality in the field of Navy. And with us today, we have Commodore Srikant Kesnur, Vishisht Seva Medal, an alumnus of the prestigious National Defence Academy, who was commissioned in the Indian Navy in July 1986. In his 36 years career, he has had extensive experience in maritime operations, training, leadership, diplomacy, administration, mentoring, and communication. He has been the captain of 2 frontline ships, an anti-marine frigate INS Vindhyagiri, and India's only landing platform dog INS Jalashwa. And in addition, his tours of duty have witnessed several important assignments, prestigious courses, and interesting tenures at sea and ashore. His other tenures include being the defense advisor at the High Commission of India, based in Nairobi, Kenya, from October 2008 to March 2012, with Kenya, Tanzania, Seychelles, Eritrea, and Somalia as his area of responsibility, as well as being the faculty dean of studies at different times at the National Defence Academy, Pune, at Defence Services Staff College, Wellington, and at Naval War College, Goa. He has a PhD from Mumbai University, apart from 5 postgraduate degrees in science and social sciences. He has been lead writer and chief editor of 11 books, monographs, and many journals for the Indian Navy. He has been involved in several academic, creative, and corporate outreach endeavors of the Navy. Prior to his retirement on 30th June 2022, he was the director of Maritime Warfare Center, Mumbai, and in addition, also the officer in charge of the Naval History Project. He was conferred the Vishisht Seva Medal in Presidential Awards in 21.
Thank you very much. My pleasure entirely. Thanks to La Martiniere, and pleasure to meet you both, Ayan and Ruman, and wonderful to meet the rest of your friends through both of you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. So the first question that we'd like to ask you is that what is the nature of the work in the Indian Navy like, and what does a day in the life of a naval officer look like?
In itself, this can lead to lots of answers. It's a fairly, let's say, complex question, because Indian Navy is huge, and depending upon which branch, whether you're serving on a ship or ashore, at what level, are you an admiral, or are you a lieutenant, are you an officer, are you a sailor, which is your branch, which is your specialization. I mean, you must imagine the Navy to be like a super big city, or a hospital or something, where different people have different sort of jobs, and perhaps if you take an equivalent to a hospital, an anesthetologist is doing something different from a nurse, who's doing something from a medical administrator, to doing something different from a paramedic and a surgeon, and so on. But let me see if I can sort of try and place that in the context of a ship, which is in many ways the central functioning organization of the Navy. So usually Indian Navy's ships, particularly the big ships, even the smaller ones, sail a lot, which means that typically when they are operational, they tend to be out for a huge amount of time. Maybe not continuously, you come back and go out because there are operations that you need to do, but they're mostly putting in, say, something like 200 days at sea or something like that in a year. And therefore, and the rest of the time in harbor too is busy. So if you were to take the ship as a measure of a Navy's working unit, it is typically a very busy day. It starts very early. You want to maximize on your time, your operational time, to do things at sea. And most importantly, you must remember that the only way to be sort of prevent a war is to be always prepared for it. Now, this seems like a contradiction, but the only way to prevent a war is to be prepared for it. And the only way to be prepared is to constantly train. Therefore, what a Navy does in peacetime is to replicate what it might do in wartime, which means that we practice for war at all times. If you asked a single line sentence, what does the Navy do in peacetime? We prepare for war at all times, which means we fly, we dive, we sail, we do submarine operations, we do other exercises, we do exercises in harbor, we do mental sort of, what are called table board exercises in terms of board gaming. And then, of course, you have a lot of courses and training to keep people understand their profession. We have a huge training command in Kochi, and lots of colleges and schools, which are institutions for specialized training. People go there for courses of various durations so that they can learn to be better professionals. There are people in Delhi and headquarters and elsewhere who work behind the desk to make sure that people on the field get the necessary ammunition, get the necessary support. There are dockyard technicians who keep ships and systems buzzing and going. But at the end of the day, the one sentence answer, what does the Navy do in peacetime? It prepares for war in every respect, and every human being in the Navy is focused on winning the next war. And that is why all preparations are geared towards that. And therefore, everything that you do in a day, big and small, exercises, planning, preparation, all of that involves essentially, that aspect of being forever ready.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for that answer. And like you talked about, being prepared for war at all times is one of the major points where the Navy needs to be. Based on that, a question which has been asked by most of the people who wanted to listen to this podcast is that how much do you, sir, think that India's naval strength has grown and evolved over the years, and how has its scope increased in India as a profession?
Well, that's a wonderful question. And I must tell you that we are very proud. I have spent 36 years in the Navy, and I've seen it grow humongously. But if you see over 75 years since Indian independence, this is something all of you should be proud about, that Indian Navy has grown up to become one of the biggest navies of the world. Now, please remember that in 1947, when we became free, we were a very truncated Navy. The British left us a very, very small navy, a very poor navy. Our biggest ships were called sloops, which were of the size of about 1,000 tons, less than half a dozen. From there now, we are a navy that operates aircraft carriers, submarines, formidable surface ships. We build in India. There are lots of wonderful things we're doing. Today, we count amongst one of the world's fourth, fifth, sixth largest, among the top 5 or 6 navies in the world. And that's been a remarkable growth. I'm glad you asked, because I do a series of lectures called The Growth of Our Navy, and I'm willing to do that for your college too, how our Navy has grown. But the important point is it's grown hugely, it's grown humongously, and each and every one of us who's been a stakeholder, who's seen this grow, is proud of it, because in some senses you all played a part in this. So yes, it has grown fantastically, and it's not just grown in size, it's grown in sophistication, it's grown in combat power, it's grown in human wear, it's grown in infrastructure. We have since mid-90s started taking women, and that has only increased over the years. So there have been lots of, and we have certain remarkable sub-specializations, from diving to hydrography, that is surveying, to even music and catering, where Navy is almost like a leader. We are world leader in many of these things, and we have been building ships in India. I must tell you that long before anybody else, any other entity in India did it. It is the Indian Navy started building ships from 1960 onwards. September 1960, 62 years ago, we began to do Atmanirbharta and making in India. So today, almost all the ships that the Navy orders are built in India. And that's remarkable, because, if a country can build aircraft carriers, as we did just a week ago by commissioning the INS Vikrant, it talks of a high level of technological sophistication and involvement of the Navy in this part. So I think we've grown very well, both qualitatively and quantitatively. The Indian Navy has grown in an amazing way. What is the second part of your question? I lost that. You said, how much has the Indian Navy grown? And the second part was?
It was, how has the scope of Navy as a profession increased in India?
Again, as I brought out, tremendously, because as the strength of the Navy has kept increasing, that means we've started to take more people, obviously. And as the specialities widen, you also need people in different sort of branches, different domains. So the scope has increased, while we continue to be a science and technology centric Navy in that sense. Even within that, from civil engineering to mechanical to marine engineering to IT to executive specializations, communications, which I am, communications and EW, anti-submarine warfare, navigation. I mean, the plethora of specializations, sub-specializations, branches, even dazzles someone like me. I'm losing track of how much the Navy is expanding. So I believe that there are growth prospects across the spectrum for a wide range of disciplines and specializations.
Thank you so much, sir. It is actually a moment of pride for all of us to get to know this from you. Thank you.
Truly, sir, truly. And hearing you talk about how much the Indian Navy has grown, it gives you a feeling of, as I answered, a feeling of pride. But I'd also like to know what inspired you to take up this profession before you were aware about these facts, and how much the potential of being in the Navy has. What inspired you to take up this profession?
Roman, this is actually a very interesting story, and I'll take some time to delineate it, because I believe that people in your the school will realize that to join the Navy, everyone, it is good if someone knows about it, and it is good if someone is preparing for it. We didn't have too many of these career fairs or something like that when we did it. But the point is, in many ways, it was an accident, but it was a wonderful accident. I studied in a Sainik school in North Karnataka, a very underdeveloped part of the country at that time. I mean, North Karnataka in some ways still is. But the Sainik school was a fantastic school. It had all the facilities that you can think of. So it seemed a natural succession to join the armed forces. However, the Navy was very little known. And therefore, in my 11th standard, like you are now in your 11th, we had to fill up forms for joining the NDA. Those days, you could join NDA after 11th, but you had to fill up the form for your service much before. So around this time of 1981, more than 40 years ago, September of 1981 or so, I filled up the form. And like most people, you would say that, okay, we'll join the army, because army was more well known. Even in the coastal place, even in the peninsular India where I was. Also because you felt that all of your friends will sort of live together, join together, साथ में रहेंगे. You have that kind of bonding and nostalgia about yourselves. So I filled up the army and forgot all about it. In the evening, my father, who had sort of gone out of town for a couple of days, he came back and very matter of fact speaking, "Acha beta kya kiya?" and all that. He asked, "What did you do?" And I said, "Yeah, I filled up Form 20." He said, "Yeah, very good. What did you opt for?" I said, "I opted for the army." Army? Why not the Navy? I said, "Why?" He said, I had this principal I had known when he joined. He was teaching in the same school, and he said when I joined, the principal was a Navy officer. He was a guy who was very dashing, and I was inspired by him. So why don't you join the Navy? And in any case, very many people from the school joined the army. Do something different. And those days, children listen to their parents. So, I just went and scratched next day and made it the Navy. I had not seen the sea except for once off Gateway of India as an 8 or 9-year-old kid. And frankly, I was terrified of the sea when I saw it from the gateway. And when we saw it, it was not even rough. But I had not seen the sea apart from that. So it was simply a kind of whim, a kind of, being nudged. I thought that I was more suited for careers in law, or I read a lot of Perry Mason books, or politics. And I would have loved to have been a television anchor, but there was no television those days, So I'm trying to suggest that it was entirely an accident of fate, but a fantastic accident. I mean, in the sense I couldn't have asked for anything better. It was very nice. And like I said in my article after retirement, given a chance, I'd like to join the Navy all over again. So that's what made me. And the reason I'm telling this story in detail is that, yes, there is one set of people who join when they know, and they know well, which is very good. It's good to be prepared and good to know. But there are many times in life when, you just go with the flow. And in my case, that's what happened. And I'm very happy with the outcome of that. And that can happen too with some of you.
Right, sir. Thank you so much for sharing that important part of your life with us. That was a great insight into the same. Another question, sir, which I would like to ask on behalf of everyone is that, according to you, what is the process of becoming a naval officer, and what are the certain examinations and physical abilities which are required for the same? And would you like to share some insights with reference to your own preparation at that time?
Yeah. See, what I will seek to do is give you the flesh and bones behind it. The skeletal framework, matlab information आपको online मिल जाएगा. You just Google how to join the Navy or how to this one, or you go to UPSC, or you'll get that. So the important thing is the story behind the story. If you were to join the Navy as an officer, the best way to do it is to either do it through the National Defense Academy or through the Naval Academy, which is after your 12th. So you start preparing in your 12th. And the exams for these are held, they are promulgated differently, but they are held a little or fairly much before your 12th standard board exams to deconflict the two. So essentially, what is the syllabus? It is standard 12th class science syllabus. The Navy, and I must say this, though I have specialized both in humanities and sciences in various subjects, and I'm a deep lover of humanities and liberal arts. The Navy has largely focused on science and technology, and understandably so, because there is lots of science and technology. So you need to be preferably science this one in your 12th, so that you understand the syllabus, you are able to follow it, and you apply for those papers. It's a common entrance exam for both the Naval Academy and NDA, but you got to give your choice whether it is NDA or the INA as it is called. Now, NDA does tri-service training, therefore the number of naval cadets it takes is limited. The Indian Naval Academy is not unlimited, but it is focused naval training. So what happens is, if you join the Naval Academy, you do a 4-year course, which trains you to be an officer, but it's also a BTech course, because the Navy of future wants everyone to be an engineering or a technology graduate. So everyone who is graduating from the Naval Academy these days is a BTech. Now, because the NDA course is a 3-year course, you have 1-year gap. So after 3 years, they come to the Indian Naval Academy for the 4th year. But because they have done a BSc in NDA, they do a post-graduation course and they become MSc. They don't become BTech, they become MSc. But I think that's a small difference, because that gets sort of covered as you go along in the NDA on your in the Navy on your journey. There is lots of overlap in your learnings, courses together, and things like that. So largely for people wishing to join, please remember, start to get information towards the end of your 11th, or when you are in 11th, start getting your information, start preparing. It is standard 12th standard syllabus. You don't have to be, it's not that you have to slog for 2 or 3 years, okay, for doing so. You, of course, ultimately it's all about a merit list, an open merit list. So obviously those who score the higher number get called for what is called, there is a 3 or 4 layer uh, filtration. After you pass the written exam, the written exam, mind you, is conducted by the UPSC, so the NDA or INA has got nothing to do with it. The UPSC conducts, and the UPSC then determines that, okay, these are the so many. Let us suppose that NDA wants to select X number. So usually 3x or 4x amount of people are then called for the interview, which is called the Services Selection Board. The Services Selection Board process is normally for about 4 to 5 days, which requires you to be evaluated for a battery of tests about, what kind of a team man you are, what's your psychological abilities, how is your general outlook and temperament, because the armed forces need people of a certain, let's say, a certain outlook and temperament that you would have, so they evaluate you for that, while also evaluating your physical fitness. However, I must make it again clear here, physical fitness doesn't mean you have to be an Olympic sportsman, or you don't have to be the finest physical specimen. Remember, they will make you that in 4 years of training. What you have to be is, you just have to be a positively oriented, nice person, and you must not have certain serious medical defects. Like if you got defects in sight, if you got something in your heart, if you got a backbone that has a medical problem, because they're evaluating you. Remember, in the armed forces, you're likely to stay for 30-40 years. So they're evaluating whether your medical fitness is something that can last for these 30-40 years. So you don't have to be Usain Bolt, you don't have to be Neeraj Chopra. You just have to be a normal, healthy fella with a good outlook to life. So in that SSB, you have physical tests, you have psychological tests, and once you clear that, you are again subjected to a full medical exam. Once you clear the medical, mind you, if you do fail, again they have something called, you are put down temporarily. That means if you can come back within certain time with that thing, let's say less weight, more weight, something like that, remedied, or you can even appeal to another bigger hospital against that, fine. If it is permanent, then maybe you might not be able to do it. But again, permanent rejection on medical grounds also you can appeal, based on certain medical advice. I don't want to go too much into that. So there's a 3-stage process: the written exam, then the Services Selection Board, followed by the medical test. After you finish all that, and assuming you clear all that, then comes the final thing called the merit list. Now, usually, again, if you are taking X number of people, you take at least 1.5 times of that in your final merit list, because it's not necessary that all those who have been selected will necessarily join. After 12, someone may want to pursue another career, someone may want to go to engineering, someone may want to go to medicine, because by the time you finish all this, you would have also finished your 12th standard exams. So, if you don't necessarily figure in the top in the merit, don't worry, wait, and if you are there, then you might receive a call letter. So normally the process is like this. What I want to tell you, a couple of things. Remember, don't get intimidated by the process. Be relaxed. It's good to want to join. Prepare for it. There is no, you have to work hard and you have to prepare. But it is like preparing for your 10th standard board exam or 12th standard board exam. You don't have to necessarily be obsessed about spending all your working hours. Please play games, enjoy a good sort of social life. Put in certain amount of hours with discipline and dedication every day, 2 hours, 3 hours, whatever you want to do. Evolve a strategy for your papers, the number of papers. When we did, remember, I don't want to give the specifics because I attempted this 40 years ago. There were 4 papers. Now there could be more papers, so test papers. Have a strategy for each paper. General knowledge 1, general knowledge 2, maths, English, have a strategy. There are regular coaching books which tell you what are the pattern of papers that have come before. This is a standard stuff in the school that gives you some idea. Do that, and don't be intimidated though. Secondly, remember, NDA, INA, you've got 4 or 5 chances. So if you are very, very keen, I mean, I was lucky to join in the first one, but if you're very, very keen, remember that you can do it in subsequent chances. You don't have to feel disappointed at not having made it. Third, as I emphasized, you got to be reasonably medically fit and reasonably physically fit. You don't have to think that, array, if Fauj hai, they will only take champions. They will make you a champion, but you don't need to be a champion when you are preparing to join. But what you got to do is have positive attitude. For example, in the SSP, if they ask you to leap off a board and catch a rope, don't be afraid of doing that. There is a sandpit below. Nobody wants you to break your bones. Remember that. Nobody would want that. But they want to know whether you will freeze or you will jump. I'm just giving you one small example. So be positive, be optimistic, don't be intimidated, and remember there are sufficient chances. So be sincere and dedicated, but let your preparation sometimes not prejudice you and make you feel obsessed about this. In fact, you will better your chances of joining the Navy if you're very well prepared, but have a slightly calm and detached attitude.
All right, sir. Thank you so much for making us understand that what are the three parameters on which we are being judged: the written examinations, the service selection board, and how the medical examination takes place. And also for the people listening to this podcast, I would also like to reintroduce what sir mentioned about how the army looks forward to seeing a different sort of vision from all of you, and how they just want you to be reasonably healthy and not going to be a champion, as sir mentioned.
Yeah,
So
I just want to clarify a couple of things here. Now, when you talk of services selection board, look, the selection or rejection there is not a selection or rejection of you. The armed forces needs a particular personality type. For example, it wants someone who is a team man, because everything in the armed forces is done as a team. Now, if you are a nerdy guy who wants to be a scientist, or you are a creative fellow who's an author, it is entirely possible that you like to operate alone and you're very happy doing that. So it is not that one personality is better than other. It is just that since the armed forces need a particular person, we choose that. So please remember, when you go into the services selection board, you might be the most brilliant guy. You may be the IIT or AFMC or IIMS kind of guy, but don't feel bad if you are rejected at the services selection board. All that they're telling you is that, man, your outlook is not something that the armed forces might want, or at least at this stage. Some of them can be fixed. Armed forces want a more outgoing personality, a gregarious person, because you got to be a team leader. You got to inspire your team. You got to be a good communications person. Now, you might not have to be a great communications person in some other profession, So rejection or selection at SSP is not any endorsement or rejection of your personality. It is simply choosing a certain personality type for the armed forces. So don't feel disappointed if that happens. And remember that the armed forces, because after all, billions are going to be spent on you. Billions are spent on armed forces equipment, So that's why you need a pilot. You need a guy who's fantastic in response, right? Everything happens at Mach 2, Mach 3. So if you don't have that kind of response, it's okay. You're not meant to be a pilot. It doesn't mean you're a bad human being or you'll not make a good engineer. You could build greatest of planes. It doesn't mean you'll be a great pilot. So we need to understand those differences.
thank you so much, sir, for that extremely well articulated answer. That was like having everything that we wanted to know from you. Thank you so much, sir. You also talked about how you were able to talk in the humanities as well as the sciences which you took up in school, right? So, sir, based on that, a question which is dear to me and all those listening to this: how do we maintain a balance with the school activities, our personal life, and the studies, so that we can move ahead and choose this as a career?
Again, very interesting question. And Ayan, my life actually has been a roller coaster. I did very well in school. I was a school topper. I used to top in most of these subjects. Then my performance plunged in NDA. I stood All India 25. That's very high in the merit to joining NDA amongst lakhs of candidates. But in NDA, my performance plunged because it took me some time to get used to the physical, this one and all that. But after 2 years there, in the final year, I did well. In fact, I did very well in getting A+ in maths and physics and all that. But because of the CGPA system, I still passed out with a very modest record in NDA. But that doing well in the last year helped me. And when I got back into the Navy, then I was able to revive my mojo again and do reasonably well. and to be able to get distinct. I've topped sometimes I'm not top, but I've been nearly there, let's say in the top 2, 3, 5, and got distinction and all that. So how do you do it? One, of course, you learn after all this thing is balance. Okay, you need to bring in hard work, certainly. I think you need to prepare. And let me tell you one thing: every time I am taking a class or making a presentation, even if it is a presentation I've made 100 times, I go back to it, read it, revise it, prepare for it. So there is no substitute for certain amount of preparation, certain amount of discipline, certain amount of rigor in anything and everything you do. You got to prepare. Even if it is a known territory and terrain, you got to prepare. You got to be disciplined. You got to put in certain hours on that. But you also need to have a fairly, let's say, a fairly balanced view. You must know how you must strategize as to how important. All tests need not be very important. There are some where you might have to balance, some where you may have to play as per, as they say in cricket parlance, play according to the conditions, the strength of the pitch, the strength of the bowler. So there are different strategies. You also need to understand that sometimes your preparations can come a cropper. That occasionally you might fail. When I say fail, you might not rank in a subject, but you might not get how much what you think you did. It doesn't matter. Don't be permanently disappointed by adversity. Use every adversity as a building block for the next success. Learn lessons. There are no permanent defeats and victories. Every day is a new day, and every day you got to keep trying. So, but everything needs preparation. Everything needs rigor. Everything needs hard work. Everything needs discipline. And all of this can be done without sacrificing your play, without sacrificing your social life, without sacrificing your enjoyment, without sacrificing reading. I used to be obsessed with reading. Read novels, read things which were, out of syllabus books. I was obsessed about cinema. I used to bunk and go out to watch movies. So you can do all that. You can have fun, and you can still do well. But be clear. The thing is, a plan, a strategy, some idea of where you see yourself and how you, and mental preparation. Again, I go back to cricket, like many people say in batting and all, the day before or 2 days before you are this one. One of the things you must do is sort of rehearse yourself. That works for me. Mental preparation, 12 hours, 24 hours before, as to what might be the, kis tarah ball tappa karega aur main kya karunga. That way, what would be the question? How will I answer it? Play those situations and scenarios in your mind and yourself. That's work for me. But of course, these are not formulas. These are guidelines. So different people from these guidelines, different people have to get their own certain specific formulas as to what will.
Thank you so much, sir. That was, again, a very comprehensive answer, highlighting all the aspects which we wanted you to touch. Thank you so much for that. So my question to you now, sir, is what are the certain major activities that the Indian Navy undertakes on a daily basis to secure India and its people, which the general public is not aware of? If you can share it with us.
Yes, of course. And I'm glad that you said it, because the Navy is called the silent service. And there's a reason. People cannot see the Navy operate, right? You've seen Air Force planes flying over you. You see the Army people, call them. Even on Republic Day, you can see them. The Navy can't get ships up Yamuna River, So we have a problem, and much of our action happens beyond the gaze of people on land. So you don't know what we are doing, right? So what is it that the Navy does? And please remember this, that territorial security, or what you call defending the borders, is just one part of what the Navy does. The Indian Navy protects and secures our maritime interests all over the world. What does your maritime interests all over the world mean? Remember that because oceans connect the whole world, and 70% of world is oceans, more than 90% of global trade is through the seas. Also that on the seas, there are no policing forces like we have on land. So the Navy does everything from war fighting, it does policing or constabulary or keeping good order at sea, it does humanitarian assistance, search and rescue, disaster relief and all that. It also does maritime diplomacy, because you're always operating in international waters. Beyond 12 nautical miles or about 20 kilometers is international water. You're operating in international waters. So the Navy does a wide range of things. What are your maritime interests? You have all your energy flows coming all over from the world. You have most of your offshore installation extracting petroleum and fuel off Bombay High off. They're all in international waters. They're in your EEZ, but they are far away at sea. You have scientific stations in Antarctica. That is your maritime interest. You have the Indian diaspora spread all over the world. Tomorrow, someone can threaten them. So that's your maritime interest. If you get a oil extraction, spot through another government's effort somewhere in a different part of the world, that is your maritime interest. So the Navy's role is global. That is a fundamental difference. Second, wherever your maritime interests are, whether it's Antarctica or Argentina or Europe or the South China Sea, the Navy is required to be there. Thirdly, it does huge amount for maritime ecology, for maritime economy, as I told you, for ocean surveying and hydrography. The Indian Navy is a world leader in this department, So, and of course, for diplomacy, when your ships go abroad, they showcase the best of you. They showcase your technology. The crew represents a microcosm of India, as Pandit Nehru said. So, you represent India in international forums when you go there. That's why they say join the Navy and see the world. You travel frequently abroad. So these are the various things that the Navy does, which ordinary people, the normal people, don't know, because it is done beyond the horizon, beyond the pale of what. And that, of course, requires your Navy to be busy. It requires it to be always around. Our ships are spread at any moment of time, whether you take now, whether you take some days ago, you will at least have, our ships spread all over the Indian Ocean region, all over some other parts outside in the Indo-Pacific, in the Atlantic, in the Mediterranean. We also help friendly foreign nations like Maldives, Mauritius, Seychelles in providing certain security for their sea areas, because many countries in the Indian Ocean region have a security deficit. So as a preferred security partner, in a very collaborative, cooperative arrangement, we do exercises with them, we do things together with them, so that we are able to provide security, because we also look at security from a global or a regional perspective, not just national perspective. All of the oceans must be free from, say, pirates or from terrorists and things like that. So the Navy essentially does a very wide canvas of things, and without any disrespect or prejudice to the Army and Air Force, some of my best friends are in those. The Navy, being a global service with a wider canvas of things to do, does, in my opinion, many, many more things than our two sister services.
Thank you, sir, for helping us understand that really well. I'm glad that you were able to elucidate on this in such a great manner. So the last question that we have for you is that everyone wishes to serve their nation, but men like you have devoted their lives to this profession. So in the end, any special word you may want to pass on to the viewers who aspire to serve the nation through the Indian Navy, and how do they become more committed and disciplined in order to achieve this?
Yes, I mean, one, of course, I would want students from the Martiniere and anybody else who listens to this broadcast to join the Indian Navy. It's a fantastic career. It's a profession. Like I said, I envy you. I wish I was in your position to start this journey all over again and join the Indian Navy. And the Indian Navy is a growing Navy. So you want to stay in a service which is expanding, which is doing well, which has global footprint, which has, the Indian Navy today has a brand equity and international reputation. Those who have specialized domains. Certainly, I think you might find a place. We also have space, like I said, in very small numbers for catering people, to join our catering departments, for law, to join our legal department, and so on. Also, for those who are humanities-based subjects, the Navy has certain think tanks and organizations. The most important one is something called the National Maritime Foundation, which encourages studies in maritime issues. We have a Maritime History Society in Bombay. So if you're the humanities specialist who still likes to study maritime issues or diplomacy or history, after you graduate or you do a post-graduation or a PhD in this, these sort of adjunct aspects of the Navy might attract you. If you love the Navy but you're not a science graduate, continue studying it, and you could join not in uniform, but you'd still have a certain association with the Indian Navy. Above all of you, it is entirely possible today that you might not join. You might not end up joining, like I said. You might be in different professions, but know about the Navy. It's doing a lot for the country. And as long as you know what the Navy is doing, not only it makes you a more knowledgeable person, it will, for example, perhaps even get past a couple of interviews when you answer smart questions about the Navy. But internationally, it would tell you about so whether you are, like I said, you're a top management, or you're into import export, or you're a top diplomat. So long as you know what the Navy is doing, you will still be aware of it. And hopefully, even if you are not able to join because of some limitations, you will encourage your friends, your relatives, your other people to do it. I would, say that the Indian Navy is a fantastic career, and now that we've opened up to women officers, including permanent commissions for women, in fact, I'd be very happy to see a lady chief of naval staff 40 or 50 years from now. So it would be fantastic if women in greater numbers came to this one. Also, of course, I am aware that La Martiniere is the kind of international attracts people from all over. But given that it's located in UP, we'd want more people from UP and northern India also to join. Even now we have a lot, but we want a lot more, because that makes for a good understanding of peninsular India. And we say in the Navy that Samudra Bharat hi Samruddha Bharat hai. That it's only a maritime India that can be a prosperous India. So if you want India to be prosperous, you must join the maritime journey, either directly or indirectly.
Thank you so much, sir. It was an amazing series of podcasts with you. Thank you so much for all the answers, and thank you so much for this presentation. And I assure you that after listening to this podcast, that a lot of people are surely going to join the Indian Navy.